Hello, everyone. So I'm here to talk about invisible illnesses and invisible illnesses in the workplace, which kind of stems off of one of the subjects that Gail was talking about earlier on. So I think in week 3, there was a slide about basically don't be a tech bro. Try to be nice to people, be inclusive in the workplace. So I like to talk about invisible illnesses, and who knows about invisible illnesses? Clearly, not everyone. Does anyone know who this is? Does anyone like to tell me? Who? I can't see anything. So if anyone doesn't know, this is a wrestler who has a slogan, and as you can see on his wristband, it says "You can't see him," which is ironic, and kind of relates to what I'm about to talk about, because he is there, but you can't see him. So, and with invisible illnesses, they are there, but you can't see them. So my name's Joe McNeil. I'm a third-year software engineering student at the University of Portsmouth. I was a former test analyst for 4 years. Does anyone here like testers? We like testers, okay. I've had a mixed opinion on testers as a tester for 4 years. Whenever I would go to a software developer's desk, the look in fear was tremendous. I went up there just to tease them sometimes. It was amazing. I was also a former IT first-line support and field engineer. I did a bit. I drove around southern England and installed a few things, like in Kent. Drove around Brighton, drove this way as well. Yeah, interesting experience, but we'll go into that a little bit more down the line. I'm also a decent pool player, apparently. But that's what the slide says. The slide says that must be the truth. Also, that's a picture of me, as you can see with the image that points to me of Mr. Mime. I don't have any intelligent and smart photos of myself, so there you go. What is an invisible illness? Let's get on to the serious stuff now. As an invisible illness is an illness that does not portray itself, obviously, to any of the human senses. So you can't see them, you can't smell unless you're really unfortunate, and you can't hear it usually unless someone's in a lot of pain. And as you can see, it's something that you can't see and you can't hear or you can't smell. Now, I'd like to talk about the problems that arise in the workplace for people that have these conditions that can't easily be seen. And the first one I'd like to talk about is misunderstanding. And I'd like to use the ghost as sort of like an example, because I myself am not very superstitious and I don't really believe in ghosts until I actually see them. And this can kind of relate to an invisible illness or an invisible medical condition, because you don't have the same empathy, and a lot of people, humans, don't tend to have the same empathy and understanding towards something someone is going through unless they can actually see it for their own eyes. Similar to a ghost, because I don't really believe they exist, but there probably are some people in here that do. Another thing is a negative stigma. So obviously, if you can't see what someone's going through, and if you can't see what someone's going through, and for instance, they're saying that they're ill, they're not turning up to things, they're turning up late, people can ask questions such as, "You're just being lazy. When are you going to get better?" And it can stigmatise people negatively, and again, that can lead on to more things which we'll go into. With this being one of them. So if you have a negative stigma attached to you as a person, especially in an office workplace, it can lead to someone getting excluded from groups and becoming victims of gossip, which we'll go into, which can obviously impact somebody greatly. Like I said, what can these problems lead to? So identity threat. Identity threat is basically a term established that it's an increased likelihood of being devalued at a workplace, which results in overly scrutinised behaviour. So, basically, if someone's got a negative stigma attached to you and they see you do something or make a mistake, they're more likely to scrutinise the behaviour against you as a person, as an individual, because they've already stigmatised you and they already think negatively of you. And if someone else was to perhaps perform the same mistake, they may not get the same result or the same scrutinised behaviour that you've got. Another one is obviously an increased level of anxiety, because if you feel like you're being scrutinised, you feel like you've been stigmatised, then you're going to feel anxious and probably make more mistakes, and it goes round in a vicious circle. And again, another one, as I mentioned a bit earlier, is when you're being excluded and being stigmatised negatively, you can become a victim of gossip, especially, like I said, in an office workplace where office politics sometimes do kind of kick about more often than I'd like to admit. Another one as well is reduced opportunities. So if someone has stigmatised you, they believe that you've got some sort of, well, if they believe that you're incapable of doing something as a result of a medical condition that you've got that isn't easily visible, then you can get, people can not trust you to do a job, and might have a personal vendetta against you, so therefore someone else will get to do something that you might like to do. Yeah, let's go to the next bit. And as you can see, identity threat was a term created by Professor McGonagall. So therefore, it must be true, right? So my experience. So I have a bit of confession to make. I told you a little bit about myself earlier, but I didn't tell you everything. So I have an invisible illness called ulcerative colitis, which is kind of similar to Crohn's disease, if anyone's ever heard about that. It's not very nice. There's loads of symptoms that happen with it. Stress can be a big impact. It can make you, I won't even go into the symptoms, you don't even want to know them, trust me. But I have two experiences. I mentioned that I was a test analyst, and I also mentioned that I was a first-line IT support engineer and field engineer. My first experience was when I was about 18, 19, and I was working as a first-line support and field engineer, and my condition wasn't fully understood at the time. I was sort of just being diagnosed with it, but nonetheless, I was treated quite harshly, sworn at for mistakes, things like that, which resulted in symptoms getting way worse, shouted at more, symptoms way worse, and you get a vicious cycle. And I didn't last longer than a year there, which is probably understandable. The second experience was as a tester, which, as I said, I was a tester for 4 years, which went a bit better, as you can probably imagine, given I lasted 4 years. They were much more understanding. I disclosed my illnesses. And yeah, they're understanding. They gave me opportunities, and I ended up getting promoted. They had confidence in me. I grew confidence, and yeah, two drastically different experiences. So yeah, interesting. So why is this relevant to us in tech? Because it could be tied to generic workplace invisible illnesses as well. There could be, stress comes in all sorts of forms. All jobs come in their own different challenges. But in the tech workplace, there are a lot of, let's go into it. There are a lot of deadlines. Deadlines bring a lot of pressure and a lot of risk associated with the release of code and as such. And all of these deadlines, pressure, risk, can increase illness symptoms for an illness that loads of people in the office don't actually know exists and don't really care too much. Increased illness symptoms lead to increased work-related problems, and again, we end up in a vicious cycle. Even more so with the adoption of agile methodologies as of probably the last 10 years or so, or probably a bit longer than that. We have more deadlines, which could result to more pressure and more risk. I say maybe less risk, but it depends on what you're working on. But as I said, more deadlines equals more stress, potentially, and it can be increasingly problematic for somebody. So what can we do about it? We can educate people about it. So we can educate people, employees in the workplace, that not every illness or every person who's going through a problem, it's not immediately visible, and they should be understanding that and not be judgmental towards people that are struggling with something. And we just should not stigmatise people, basically. We should accommodate. So for people like people that might have back problems or some sort of spinal problems, like I said, we could accommodate for them by giving them special equipment as such. And there's loads of other ways we can accommodate for people with invisible illnesses who have disclosed their conditions. Being flexible as well. So I mentioned when I was working as a test analyst that my experience was pretty good. They were pretty flexible with me. I got some flexible hours. I was able to go to see the doctor. I was able to go to all my appointments during work hours with not too much of a eyelid blush, really. Everyone was fine with it, and I found that to be really beneficial for me. Encourage open conversation. So one thing you can't really force someone with an illness to do that isn't easily visible to somebody is to get them to talk about it, because not everybody wants to tell people about their private life. The best thing you can do really is to just have a friendly atmosphere and encourage open conversation with them. And that's probably the best chance you got in them disclosing their condition and basically working together. I think that's pretty much what I was going to talk about. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Do you think there's any accommodations that employers can make, I guess, available to everyone that would be for the benefit of everyone, that would benefit, I guess, a lot of people with invisible illnesses so that they don't have to disclose it? Because it feels like the disclosure is definitely something that some people, as you say, are not going to want to do.
Yeah.
I guess it's like, how can an employer work around that? How can they make sure that they are inclusive without essentially forcing disclosure?
It's one of those, because conditions can vary so greatly, and some of them can be deemed kind of worse than others in terms of how you'd want to present them to people. It's difficult to have one way to get everybody to disclose something like that. And obviously that's the most important thing you can do, because if someone's not going to tell you about their condition, you can't really do anything to help them. So I'm not entirely sure there's one way, except from being a company that from the get-go is open and probably adopts more feminine traits, if you want to say it that way. Just be nice, have an open environment, and that way that's the biggest chance you've got in someone telling you bits about their personal life, because no one wants to be judged, and if you don't feel like you're going to get judged, you're more likely to say, well, disclose information. I think that's all you can really do.
So basically just things that make a better work environment for everyone.
Yeah.
It's for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah, basically. Be nice.
Thank you.